All right, good morning. I'm really excited about this call. To be honest, I've wanted to do this one for a long time, so it's really cool that we get to do this. Let me introduce you to Sarah Jamieson, all around awesome, badass mama jama. And I'm gonna let her kind of tell you a little bit about, like her background and where she's coming from, because I'm gonna screw it up and get it out of order and miss a bunch of stuff. So Sarah, thanks for jumping on the call. Good morning. You look fabulous.
Thank you. I showered. I'm very proud of myself today.
Right? Small wins. You got it. So please, if you can, introduce yourself to our crew here and, tell us a little bit about who you are and your background and what do we need to know?
Yeah, for sure. So, it's the industry is so fascinating to me because I started 21 years ago. So I only look like I'm, 11, but I'm 41. And it was a very different landscape, very, very different landscape. We didn't have internet. We didn't have Facebook. We didn't have, all the digital stuff that we have now. So it's, starting in an industry that really was like, hey, if you're a personal trainer, you're going to go into, weightlifting over here, or maybe aerobics over here. And that was really, my first job was first aid for minor hockey for West Vancouver. That's how I started getting into personal training. And then I got a job with Fitness World and worked for Fitness World for 4 years, helping to manage the front desk and personal training department, group fitness. And it was a really interesting landscape because for a woman coming into that arena and choosing to go straight into weightlifting very early while dabbling a little bit in the aerobics was a pretty pivotal move for me in the very beginning. And what is also fascinating is I chose personal training as an opportunity to be flexible with my time so that I could go into law enforcement. And so the two things I always wanted to do growing up was either to be some form of a coach, because I was always an athlete, dabbled in long distance running, ultra marathoning, loved weightlifting as well. I was a big WWE person. I had posters of China on my wall, like that was my thing. And but I wanted to be a police officer, I wanted to be a cop. And so for the first 4 years of my career, I was working a lot with applicants and recruits. We were training together and we were lifting heavy. And that was kind of the very beginning of where, I started this lineage into strength and conditioning. And from that, I chose not to go into policing because I loved personal training so much. I've worked for boutique studios over the course of my career. I've worked in physiotherapy clinics as well, and really been able to bridge the arena between clinical intervention and movement and strength conditioning. But there was one client that I had around 2005, 2006 that really changed the trajectory of where my business and where my vision and path was going to go. And that was Captain John Croucher. And he was a captain with the Canadian military. He had just gotten back from deployment because his land vehicle was blown up by an IED. And so he single-handedly pulled his entire platoon out of the vehicle while 80% of his body had shrapnel wounds and was second and third degree burns. And he came to me and he could barely walk. He was walking with a cane. He wanted to get back to active duty. He'd had 14 different surgeries on different parts of his body. He spent 6 months in Germany because we couldn't fly him home. And it completely changed my perspective on both training and injury prevention and how to progressively move someone through these major, major life transitions and trauma-based transformations that he was continually going through. He was still in pain. He was still on morphine. And we started working 3 times a week together for 2 years. And that is really the number one pivotal moment for me that sticks out, where I was like, why do I want to work with clients for longevity-based programming? Why do I want to work with clients from moving the joints daily, making sure that the joints and tissues, we have that restorative care that is so important in a daily practice. And applying that to strength conditioning to enhance it, doesn't take away from it. And we got him back to being able to walk, being able to run. He came on with NATO, so he ended up not going back to active duty in the same way. but he now plays hockey. He's got a family, and I still continue to coach him. And that's been, what, 13, 14 years. And so for me, injury prevention and looking at daily movement as a daily practice, moving the joints every single day, is such an important aspect of health, because we talk a lot about fitness. We don't talk a lot about health, right? And it's a health first model. And that's something that I also learned working in a clinic for 5 years, is you have to focus on the health first.
That's awesome. I really love that. And I think, again, sort of, you know, wanting you to come on and have this conversation, I think one of the challenges that we face in sort of the fitness side of things is often our clients even come to us with an expectation of what that session's going to be like. They want to squat, they want to deadlift, they want to sweat, they want to work hard. They've got this maybe shorter term goal in mind about changing possibly an aesthetic component of their body. And it's not that that's not important, because it is, especially it's important to them. It's what's, you know, getting them to look at, you know, changing their habits. But we've all been limited by somebody who wants to train that way. And you're like, oh, but you can't, like, you just can't go heavier on that form. Or like, if we don't address your feet, like we've all been stuck there. And yet that's that 50-minute session, that 1 hour session, that group training session, that's not what people want, right? So it's like, we really get stuck if we try to dominate and say, no, you have to stretch for an hour. They probably don't come back, right? So like, we're stuck between what we can see they need and what they're telling us they want, and the fact that, you know, they're showing up voluntarily, and if we don't meet their wants, they're going to stop showing up, right?
Yeah.
Whether they're in pain or not. That's
Yeah.
so. So what I wanted you to be able to explain then a little bit is like, you mentioned the durability. This program that you created is a complement to normal training, and that's awesome. Can you talk to us a little bit, like maybe sort of walk us through, like, when you talk to someone about the program, when you talk about recovery versus movement, when you talk about pain versus performance, like, what are some of the ways that you sort of get someone to buy in on, hey, you've got to do some stuff outside the session in order to be able to feel your best, perform your best, whatever? Like, what does that sound like?
Yeah, for sure. You know, a lot of it is, you know, coaching is a very conscious effort. A lot of the coaching and communication that I do, a lot of clients that come to me they're coming to me from referrals, usually from other trainers that are saying, hey, this person's deadlift isn't where I want it to be. They keep having low back pain, and we don't know why. And we've gone to a physio, and the physio can't figure it out, or maybe it is a herniated disc, you know, whatever it is. I mean, you can have issues in the body and not have pain, and you can have no issues in the body and have pain. Pain is a very complex, very abstract thing, and it's very stigmatized in our industry as well. Just push through it, you know, no pain, no gain. And while there is time to, you know, really push through the grit, if you're continually pushing through pain and trying to continually push the body past its ability to recover on a daily basis, there will be continual pain throughout your life. So we know through pain science, and also through what we're seeing in general population, is that we have the most unprecedented time right now where we have access to all the health and fitness you can have, especially over the last couple of weeks with it going online and going virtual. I mean, everybody's doing live streams, right? Yet we also have the highest rate of injury still. So we've got low back, we've got neck and shoulders. Those are the three main coming in hot that we're seeing all the time. People don't want to be in pain. So being able to offer somebody something that is very short and sweet, that is rooted in evidence-based science, that is rooted in creating meaningful movement for a client, they will go ahead and do that work, but they're not gonna do it right away, because that's human behavior 101. Psychology is, but I'm coming here for an hour, I'm spending time with you, I don't want to do anything else on my own. Well, let's have a conversation around that. That takes time. That doesn't happen in one session, or even in the assessment. My assessment process is a little longer than most people, because I know that there's going to be a buildup to programming something for someone so that we can start to address those aches and pains on a daily basis. So when someone starts training with a trainer, they're going to feel better overall. Then the conversation becomes, well, what is the one thing that is limiting you in your daily life? Because I only see you for 4% of your day. really, right? An hour is 4% of someone's day. What are you doing for 96% of the other time? So if I can get somebody to dedicate 1% of their day every single day, which is 15 minutes, just 15 minutes of movement, most people will go, huh, that's a low barrier of entry. I think I can probably achieve that. For people that can't, how about 10 minutes? How about start with 3 times a week instead of daily and build them up slowly? It's the same type of methodology we use for programming movement and programming periodization, right? It doesn't change. It's just the psychology of really working with a client to figure out where is their barrier of entry. Can you make it simple and practical for someone to do that work? And can it be very laser focused on that major linchpin, that one primary thing that you're trying to clean up? Because that's going to allow them to go in and get the PRs that they're looking for, or be able to even just do the amount of time that they want in the gym outside of their time with their trainer. So it's a complex conversation, but it can be very simplified when you look at it from the perspective of the client and what's meaningful to them.
So what it even sounds like to me is kind of how we try to approach nutrition.
Yeah.
Maybe a lot of younger trainers make the mistake of going like, okay, you need grass-fed, grass-finished beef and, low glycemic index, high fiber carbohydrates, and you've got a nutrient time and you've got to take these supplements. Like they go all in as in like, this is what I'm doing. You have to be here now. And yet we know that of course doesn't work. Where when we're successful with nutrition, it's like, okay, here's what you're doing right now. What's one thing you're willing to work on?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, we're gonna go to McDonald's for the drive-through breakfast still, but we're gonna switch it from like a crazy big sandwich to just like, the egg, hold the cheese, and then like maybe milk in my coffee instead of cream. So like when we're finding these tiny little steps of success that people can take around changing their nutritional habits, we can slowly get to the point where, hey, cool, like across the entire day, I'm doing a good job with nutrition. So what I like about your program is it's kind of the same way. If we've got back pain, we could start by saying, okay, here's a couple things we could do even every day to address our back. And then as our back starts feeling better, it's like, ooh, did you know that your hips are connected to your back? Here's something we could add for the hips. So like what I like is it's this naturally, it's almost like sort of that drip campaign, one little thing, but where you've done a great job is sort of, being able to, I guess, triage it. Like, here's the priority, here's what comes next, here's what comes next. And essentially establishing a healthier long-term habit, right? Like we've got to breathe better, we've got to move every day, and if we can nail those things, cool, then let's go look at exercise. And it's just that people come at it from the exercise side, and we need to find a way to back them into something that's going to be a little bit more long-term and more successful.
Yeah, and it's, people don't change simply on data points and just saying, hey, so these are the things you need to do, here's a running tally of all the do's. People don't do that. They change when there's meaningful connection, when you can make somebody feel better in a session. Be like, so those 2 exercises that we just did for your warm-up that we filtered in, and then we did it for like intraset recovery, between your sets, and then we did them in your cool down. I want you to do those daily, because we could see that there's a change here. So if you can just do those daily a couple times and filter in when it's most convenient for you, great. If you can, for me, what I also looked at was like, I wanted somebody to move through every joint in their body daily, but I needed to condense it into 15 minutes. So I had the opportunity when my son was born, because I was staying home. There's not much of a change to our lifestyle right now in the last couple of weeks. But I created an online program for that. It was like, follow along, make it super simple, so someone doesn't have to look at the tutorial, look at the demo, look at the notes, look at the cues that you've written out for them. It's just like, press play, follow along, see the movement, hear the words, and explore your own range of motion. If you just move every joint daily, SPINA says this, FMS says this, DNS says this, every single major leader in movement says this: move everything daily. That way, the longevity of your joints and your tissues are maintained throughout your 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 80s, and 90s. It's actually that simple.
Yeah. So actually, I like that. Let's kind of use that as a little segue. Can you explain the difference between looking at movement from a joint-based perspective instead of from a muscle-based perspective? Or like why daily durability instead of yoga? Because those are in my mind, yoga, it's a lot of things, but like maybe trainers tend to think of it more as like, oh, it's going to help you be more flexible with your muscles. So like what's the difference, and why are you prioritizing like a joint-based approach?
Yeah, so I mean, a lot of these terms are also based in marketing so that the brain and the body can understand like, this is what we're doing, right? Joint health or joint-based movement is really about range of motion in the joints, articulation of the joints, creating joint strength. So the best way that I can describe this is one of the biggest caveats when I worked in a physio clinic was when they're assessing, and I don't assess, I'm a personal trainer, I screen and test, but when they were assessing, ideally what they're looking for when someone has pain is, do you have a joint problem or a tissue problem? Now, those two do go hand in hand. We know that every joint and every tissue has some form of centration, but we either have to classify this as a joint problem because your joint needs to be able to move. Your joint can't move, the tissues and muscles can't act on it, right? It's going to be very hard to create tension if you don't know what's going on between the joints that are working together. The same can be said for tissue, is that tissue also needs to be able to pre-tense, it needs to be able to compressurize, it needs to decompress, it needs to do all these things, contract, relax, so that everything is working efficiently together. So to simplify that, daily durability, or what I've kind of looked at and come up with, is both ends of the spectrum. So to answer your question about yoga and stretching, mobility in general is a very blanketed term. It means a lot of different things. Yoga is a lifestyle, right? It's not a system. It is a lifestyle that the Western population has adapted to say, hey, if you want to stretch and lengthen your muscles, go and do yoga. Yoga is beautiful. Like, I got certified in it 15 years ago. Love it, still use it as a tool in my toolbox, but it is one tool within a movement toolbox. And that's what we have to understand, is we need to figure out a way of finding out what movement is best for that individual. Now, what we do know is the number one thing that diminishes as we age, especially into our 60s, 70s, 80s, is joints. Joints get stiffer, they lose their lubrication, synovial fluid is different, we lose collagen as we age. That all plays a major impact. So if we can keep the joints moving through usable range of motion, then we also have the opportunity to have a deeper conversation with our nervous system and allow the muscles to be able to lengthen and stretch and contract and relax. But if your joints don't move, you're not going to be able to do any of those things. You just can't. And
that's where we get injury, right? Like if the joint can't move and then the brain goes, do it anyways, that disconnect is what means a tissue or a cartilage or a tendon or something goes, and like there's the injury, right?
Totally. And the same thing with mobility, or if we say stretching, is that, you know, what we also don't want to do is create too much length and lax in the system, right? So mobility, stretching, all these terms are relative to the person and what they're doing. You can look at like a long snapper or a pitcher. For a sport, they're going to need an excessive amount of range in certain parts of their body that we would never want in a human body if they didn't play sport, right? So it's also the human versus athlete or human versus competitor conversation as well. But as a generality, the daily durability system uses standing joint mobility, universal mobility, for basically the morning practice or the daily practice of going through all of your joints. And from a restorative standpoint, we use ground-based movement. And that ground-based movement is going to be, instead of looking at independent range or circular mobility of a joint, we're going to look at fluid movement. We're going to look at dynamic progressive movement of the tissues and the muscles. And what that does is it enables us to build mobility first, then stabilization, then strength from a body weight perspective. Prerequisites for exercise, workout, training, competition.
Awesome. So I did the daily durability program. I don't know, when we first kind of got connected, you and I, mm-hmm. And my initial experience was like, that's it.
Yeah.
Like that was really easy. It wasn't what I was used to because I've done yoga and power yoga and mobility and, you know, bunch of lifting and a bunch of, so like my initial impression was I was kind of underwhelmed. And then I kept going, and then I realized, oh, there's more subtlety and nuance here than I was picking up on in the first day. And then I started to realize, like, for example, when I finally like slowed down and did the hip move better, like, oh my God, that was awful. That was like, I was like shocked at how hard it was to stand on one leg for a while I was doing this articulation stuff on the other leg. And like in my head, I'm like, but my lunge range of motion is really good, and my deadlift is strong, and I move in all three planes of motion. So like the evolution of the experience for me was something that was really, really cool.
Nice.
And as I kind of forced myself to keep working on the ones that I was not as good at, then I started to improve. And, it was kind of cool because, the assessments that we run, like the FMA and all that stuff, I typically score really high, and I typically train in a pretty balanced, functional way. And I, can pretty much step into any fitness class, any yoga, anything. And as long as it's not like, 300-pound deadlifts without a warm-up, I can pretty much do anything. So to then see this like improvement inside of like a really subtle nuance, kind of like, I don't want to say easy, but like when you look at it on the screen, you're like, it was really interesting. And that was sort of where I kind of started to go like, wow, like the longevity and the sustainability of a practice like this compared to, you can only add so much weight on the bar before you're like, this now this doesn't matter to me anymore. Like it doesn't meet my goals, right? Maybe all trainers go through a max strength phase at some point in their career where they want to see how heavy they can lift. And then at a certain point, that's not interesting anymore. It doesn't have a long runway. So what I liked about this was this sort of like, it's 10 or 15 minutes a day. You could literally learn something new every time you do it. And it's a really cool reminder of the fact that your body shows up differently every single day. So what you did the day before, how you slept, how you ate, how you're feeling, that's going to show up as a different experience, every morning when you go to do it. So that part for me was really cool. And I'll admit up front that like, I didn't get it right away, but I kind of the 30 days to go through the experience. And that was when I really realized it. So what I wanted to ask you as well is because this is sort of where you and I started talking, was like how this is a complement to, other types of training programs, like the fact that when you're in the gym trying to gain strength or trying to achieve better muscular balance or trying to learn a new skill or a new modality, talk a little bit about, how this balances that out, or how it helps you, achieve those other types of goals that you might have.
Yeah, for sure. And any time that we're looking at, again, health versus fitness, right? So a lot of the conversations that we have are based around working out and around fitness and around meeting kind of like those really high nervous system sympathetic responses that we need to train with. Daily durability is not that. Daily durability is about tapping into parasympathetic response, moving the needle down so that we get more into the recovery and regeneration of the joints and tissues, which can't happen when you're all balls out, right? You can't do it when you're in the midst of the hustle. So the complement here is having the availability every single day from a cognitive standpoint, because psychologically, human behavior tells us that we have to do things repetitively in order to make sure that they become automatic and to make sure that we learn what it is that we're trying to do, and then maintain it. So by moving every joint and going through a recovery-based program in a very small window of time, that 1%, that 15 minutes a day, allows you to start to have a better conversation of where your usable range is on day to day, when your body changes, when you don't sleep well, maybe if you're in a recovery phase versus, of your training, or in your basically in your highest max strength. It's all going to change day to day, but you need to know how your body moves in order for you to recognize how you can adapt and modify on the fly, or modify as previously.
I love it.
So yeah, so I think it's important to understand that the other thing too is that as trainers, from a business perspective, we are being paid per hour, right? A client comes in, we spend 60 minutes with them traditionally, and then they leave. Our job doesn't stop at the end of that 60 minutes. If we are truly wanting to improve a client's health and fitness and long-term vitality, we have to be available outside of that hour. So the complement isn't just for the client, it's also a revenue stream for the trainer. To program longevity-based movement outside of the training hour complements them as well. Because now your client is working on that linchpin or those things that need to be cleaned up throughout the week to make your job easier. Because that's going to translate and show up in somebody's training because it's low threshold, which is also the harder buy-in because people want to get the sweat and get all of that on. But a lot of our clients, they're also okay. They're not trainers. They're not power lifters, right? They're not training as they were in their 20s. I mean, my back squat was 325 in my 20s. I don't want to do that again. I'm not loading the bar that much on a 41-year-old body that popped out a human. Not happening anymore. So shit needs to change as we move forward in life, right? So the complement really is making small gains that can be seen in the training hour, can make the client's job easier, or sorry, the the trainer's job easier, so that they're not having to stop in the middle of something, go, oh, your back hurts again, or we got to modify this, or you're not ready for this, right?
Yeah. So then, before we, push record, we were just talking a little bit about like, the times and what's going on. Like, we're having a web chat at home because that's what we're all stuck doing. I know for you, this is like par for the course, but so what I was hoping to be able to do as well then is, I think if you're a trainer and you're listening to this and you're like, yeah, this totally makes sense. Like I always have a program planned and then my client can't do half of it and it's really frustrating. And so if this is starting to make sense to you, what I would suggest is like, you maybe can't turn around and like, boom, all of a sudden be like really good at dealing with this current, I'm at home, I don't have a gym, my clients don't have equipment, like what am I doing? Like you might not be able to turn around and just like pull a 180 and be like an awesome master of like this situation. Mm-hmm. But what I would look at is the fact that we have sort of this forced downtime right now. And a way to be able to take advantage of this time is to learn something new, to add to a skill set, so that, I've always believed that if I don't know how to do something, I can't teach it. If I don't understand what something feels like, I don't know how to tell someone what it should feel like. If I don't feel the benefit of implementing something, I can't really honestly like sell it. Right? Like not that I'm trying to sell anything, but if I don't feel the benefit of an improved range of motion and ease of movement, I'm going to have a hard time selling that concept to a client. So what I sort of was looking at this period of time is like, as trainers, when we're used to being on the gym floor, clients back to back, squeezing our workout in somewhere in like a downtime in the day, maybe we haven't even really had the opportunity to look at our own movement. And realistically, like a lot of trainers are young. It's a great industry to get into, and sort of the mean average age is like low to mid 20s. Mm-hmm. So the issue of being slightly not relatable to some of our older clients that are dealing with things in their body that we just really don't know what that feels like. Mm-hmm. I remember getting started, like fresh out of university in my 20s, and the majority of my clients were like in their 40s and 50s. Yeah. So I'm a former pro athlete and I'm training like a nurse with 2 kids who's 35 pounds overweight and has a bunch of pre-arthritic joint pain, right? Yeah. So this time might be a really good opportunity to actually experience something like what you're talking about, which is like 10 minutes a day, 15 minutes a day. Like if you're stuck at home anyways, what are you doing? Like watching Netflix or trying to figure out like how to do inverted rows underneath your kitchen table? Like we want to do something that's a little bit better adapted to the situation that we're in. Mm-hmm. And I've seen a lot of, do this workout and here's a 30-minute thing you can do with soup cans, and that's awesome. But like, I also don't know that that's the best thing right now. Like your clients are used to being out and getting food from, you know, the lunch truck, and they've got this routine, and then all of a sudden, like, boom, they're sedentary at home. Like, what does their workstation look like? Are they scrambling and floundering because they have no routine? Like, I think there's maybe some other things that we could be helping with just for now that just might kind of like bring the overall like down a little bit, right?
Yeah. Well,
So
people are very stressed out.
sorry, you had some options for being able to start to learn a little bit about like daily movement and joint-based movement and durability. So I wanted you to share what that looks like, because like, one, it's like there's no one better to learn it from than you. You're such a master of it, and you've got so much experience and so many resources that you're just an incredible place to start. But also, you know, too, because you've got a system that's already designed to be complementary to what training looks like by the time we get back in the gym. If you can share a little bit about sort of what the opportunity is for people for trainers to actually just get a sense of what you do and how it feels, so that they can decide for themselves if it's something that they want to spend a little bit more time learning.
For sure. Yeah. So the program itself, to give a little bit of background on that, is it's a 30-day program, because we know 30 days creates a habit, all that good stuff. Each day focuses on a major joint complex. So day 1 is the spine, day 2 is the hips, shoulders, then it goes into neck and spine, then it goes into lower body, which is feet, ankles, knees, hips, and then upper body, which is hands, wrists, elbows, shoulders, and then a full body. So the goal here is to really isolate each one of the major joint complexes. You're still going through all of them, but you'll spend more time on that particular joint complex in that particular movement. Again, there's a standing joint based Move Better program, and then there's the restorative Restore Better kind of ground-based programming as well. So to give a little context on that is that's kind of the 30-day program itself. There's a couple different ways to kind of test that out for free. I've got a durable starter kit, which allows you to have 3 full days. So you get spine, hips, and shoulders of both ends of the bookends of the day, I like to call it, with active recovery programming as well that can be utilized in this time. You do need some equipment for that. So kettlebells, bands, tennis ball, dowel. So that's one thing that is of an opportunity. The other thing is, with this global landscape that we're in, is my durable movement series, my 4-week series that I was going to be teaching in person, is now being delivered online. So I'll be live streaming 60-minute daily durability sessions in my beautiful home here. And what I'm offering to the trainers, Steve Nash, is if you want to pop in and try one of those classes, you can do so for free. So I'll be offering a discount code for that, which I can email to you. It would just be super simple, Steve Nash. And I run those on Sundays at 10 a.m. Sundays, because that's usually a programmed rest day or recovery day, but it will be recorded. So for people that maybe are like, hey, even though I'm at home, I can't make that 10 a.m., you can still actually sign up for it. You'll get the recorded 60-minute video, and then I'm offering 3 days of daily durability in that as well. So 3 15-minute standing joint series, that's going to be progressive over the 4 weeks. So that's another thing, is that each movement, like each day, each week is progressive. So it builds on the next, which you've experienced.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, sweet. So I like, that's awesome and generous, and I think like just a really good idea to take advantage of. And it also just matches like what most of us have available at this time. So
Yeah.
I'll make sure that I include the links in the, you know, video notes or whatever, and anybody that kind of, whether you have to email me to get the link or whatever, we'll figure it out. But essentially, I've even taken a step back from, you know, what my normal training is for now. And I've actually just gone back to doing 15 in the morning and 15 at night. And even sometimes if I find that I'm sitting at this weird little desk thing that I have, if I'm sitting for too many hours, I just go repeat a little bit of like the morning one that I did. And so for something that I've sort of fallen back to as a really great resource, I just thought like, hey, it would really be cool to potentially give more of you guys access to this kind of thing. And then it just opens up a conversation about being able to create longevity in training, being able to just have a wider conversation around helping our clients manage movement and fitness and pain and lifestyle and whatever. So I think this is a great opportunity where you're down and you can't really do your job the way you normally do. Like, take advantage of the downtime. I think a lot of times we get busy and we go, man, there's all this stuff I'd love to do, but I'm just too busy. Well, cool. This would be a great time to learn something new and add some tools to the toolbox, because we're probably not really super busy. We could probably do this as a get ahead period of time. So that's really cool. Is there anything else that you wanted to mention, talk about, in terms of sort of like this landscape that we've been covering? Is there anything else that you wanna add that I haven't asked for directly?
I don't think so. I think, you know, the only caveat, like the biggest conversation that we do need to start having is the daily aches and pains that clients have, because 1 in 5 people right now do have chronic pain. And we also have to recognize that it's the full spectrum. We're just not talking about the human body. We're also talking about psychology, social, the biopsychosocial model. And right now, with the landscape that we're in, I mean, everybody's closed for 2 weeks, but the reality is, with infectious disease, this is going to take a long time. There's a trickle effect here. So we may be stuck for a month. We may be stuck for a month and a half before we're starting to work back into things. So the daily movement and programming outside of this, you know, first week of everybody going, sweet, I'm going to take it outside, I'm going to take it inside, I'm just going to do my home. That we know from like behavioral methodologies is that that's going to get old very quick. People are going to need more opportunity to be like, okay, I can't just work out in my home and just do the sweaty stuff. I need to be able to also look at the compensations that are now creeping up from that, from being home and being in work desks that aren't, you know, ergonomically sound as you would in the office and all of that. And so I think it's really just having that conversation and continually having it as a rallying point for deeper dialogue. And I have lots of resources online for people to touch base and to start having those resources for them.
Awesome. I love it. All right. Super cool. So yeah, like, you'll check the show notes for the link. We'll make sure that that becomes available if you want. I was even talking a little bit with Ali yesterday about the fact that I was going to have this conversation with you. And I think maybe just my repetition and enthusiasm around, you know, my little 15 minutes, even in the last couple of days, she goes like, oh, maybe I should do that Sunday thing with you. And I'm like, oh, yes.
Yeah.
You know, you can't coach that for the people you love, but you want them to be able to take advantage of it. So, you know, for those of you that have been listening to this, I encourage you to, like, be your own client first, right? Lead from experience. So if this is something that sounds like it's crazy and new to you, I encourage you to give it a try and get the experience for yourself, and sort of really come to an understanding, at bare minimum, at least. What are your clients going to experience if they first start trying stuff like this the same way you are, right? I'm not expecting that a couple of movement sessions are going to turn you into a movement master. That's crazy. But get a sense of what that experience is going to be like, and try to empathize a little bit with maybe what some of the needs of your clients are in you know, being stuck in a different sort of circumstance. And that allows you to make a more authentic recommendation or a more authentic suggestion for, you know, some things that might help them. So I encourage you guys to take advantage of this. Sarah is just like a master of all of these things. So even getting a little bit of it is really going to help level you up. And what I'd love to do is even, you know, maybe have a follow-up conversation, or we can talk about setting up like a live webinar for like trainers to experience, something like that. So what I encourage you guys to do is try it out, you know, reach out, leave some comments if you're interested in more. I think just with having time on our hands, and as long as you've got a computer with a lens on it, we basically have everything we need. So I encourage you guys to try it out. And thank you so much to you, Sarah, for joining us. Like I said, this has been something I wanted to do for a long time. So kind of nice that this circumstance allowed us to slow down and do it. And yeah, so I'm stoked on that. And, you know, we'll even try to get the links out right away in case you guys are feeling inspired and want to jump on it right away. So I'll turn it over to you. Last thoughts, last pieces of wisdom. How do you want to close this one out?
That's a great question. Can we do a song? I'm just joking. I'm not going to do a song. No, I just want to thank everybody for showing up. Keep doing what you're doing, keep momentum high, and also just know that what we're experiencing is a shared experience. So we are all in this together. I know that's a tagline that's been like overused, but it is very, very true that we are all in this together. And as an industry, we just have to continually hit home the importance of all the things, right? So, and I just love I get to see your mug more often.
Yeah, I like it. You got it. Awesome. All right. Thanks so much. Have a great day. I know we snuck this in while your son was napping, so chances are you're back on mom duty or walk duty or something. But
Never ending, man. Never ending.
appreciate the conversation, and hopefully we'll see you and some of you that are watching. We'll see you on a movement class or give us some feedback and follow up about whether or not this has been something that's been helpful for you.
Perfect.
Great. Thanks so much, Sarah.